Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Spring 2021 West Virginia Cybersecurity and Game Developers Expo. I am Patrick Smith, and next we have a session here with Scott Nicholas talking all about VPNs. What's Hollywood and what's real, basically. So he's going to let you know what a VPN can and can't do and how much trust you should put into it based on what you think it can and can't do. So, Scott, I'll let you take it over here, and I'll help you get your presentation up.
Okay. So, for those of you who don't know who I am or whatever, I am a professor at Mount West Community and Technical College, along with Patrick. I've been a professor now for around 20 years, a little bit over that now. So, and so we're going to take a look at VPNs. You hear a lot about them nowadays. It seems like every time I see a monetized YouTube video, they're talking about the VPN product they use. And so you hear a lot about them. A lot of people don't. They may have some vague idea of what they are, and it's supposed to be some kind of security thing, right? So first of all, let's just take a look at actually what a VPN is. And VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. And the idea behind it is it gives you some online privacy and anonymity by creating a private network for you going over your public internet connection. And it's virtual because it's not actually a physical network. It's one that gets created by software. Excuse me. How does this happen? Well, VPNs actually mask your IP address. What IP addresses are is just like your street address. Every device that gets on the internet has an IP address. And so when you get on through your ISP, you have an IP address that gets assigned by that ISP. And after you get on, then everything that you do can be monitored through that IP address. And so a VPN actually hides your IP address with one of theirs. And that tends to make you somewhat invisible on the internet, but not completely. Another thing that the VPN does is it actually creates an encrypted connection. And what that encryption does is when you get on the internet, you're going across a huge network of other networks. And the thing is that you don't have any control over those networks. And you have no control really over the path that your data takes to get from where you are to where you want to go. And so, we do see nowadays that HTTPS, which is secure web browsing, is available on most websites that you go to now. And so there is encryption already involved there. But a VPN actually adds additional encryption to keep people from spying on what you're doing is the idea. So why do you want one of these things? Security is a big thing. Every time you turn around, someone's being breached. Hundreds of thousands or millions of records get compromised. And so everybody wants to be secure, you would think. When you go on the web and you make purchases over a Wi-Fi network, someone can be sitting there eavesdropping on your data because all it is basically a radio. Your Wi-Fi connection is one device with a radio transmitter sending information to the Wi-Fi access point. And so by allowing all of your data to be encrypted, then this blocks people from, they still may be able to capture the data packet, but they can't read anything inside it. It's just encrypted gibberish to them. So if you travel a lot and you use Wi-Fi access points that you're unsure about or that are open out there, then you definitely need a VPN. Think about all the times that you've been sitting in a coffee shop and you're reading your emails, or you go and check your bank account balance or whatever. While you're doing that, you're exposing your data to bad actors or threat actors or just bad folks that could possibly be sitting there right next to you, capturing and looking at your data. And so anything that gets transmitted while you're doing that can be vulnerable to eavesdropping by people getting on that same Wi-Fi access point. So let's take a look really at what you have network-wise. What are the pieces that you use to get on the internet when you don't have a VPN? So without a VPN, you've got a PC or your cell phone or a tablet or a laptop, and you need to get connected to the internet. So the first thing that you're going to do is get yourself a Wi-Fi access point, a home router, and you're going to want to get your devices connected to that. And from there, then that home router needs to be connected to your internet service provider, which is going to be, for most people, their cable company. Some people do have DSL, which is a digital telephone service internet connection, but the majority of people nowadays are doing this through their cable service provider. And so that router at home plugs into a box that was provided by your cable company, and you connect to your ISP, your internet service provider, the cable company. And from there, they give you basically an on-ramp to the internet. So this is essentially what you have without a VPN. And anywhere along the way out there, between your home router, the ISP's network to the internet, you can be, snooped on, spied upon, or whatever. Your internet service provider is going to keep logs of everywhere you go. A lot of people don't necessarily know that they're doing that, but they do. And so if you were suspected of some kind of illegal activity or suspicious activity, the authorities can get a search warrant and go to your ISP and say, we need to see all the activity from this person's account for the last 2 years or whatever. And the ISP will provide that. There have been court cases where they tried to keep that information private, and that was struck down. So you have no expectation there of privacy through your ISP. So how does the VPN actually protect your IP address and give you some privacy? Well, what we saw before was your data going from your home router to your ISP, and then from your ISP out onto the internet. Well, that is a path of data from one point to another. And what VPNs do is they actually create, pardon me, a tunnel, a data tunnel between your network and what we call an exit node in another location, which is really a server that is operated by the VPN provider. And so that could be thousands of miles away. It could be in another country. It could be all the way on the other side of the world. And what it does then, the VPN sends your data through that tunnel, and it pops out wherever you have connected to the VPN server, whether it's, in Washington, D.C., or it's in Bangkok. And because of that, when your data comes out, it is using the IP address of the VPN's hardware, not yours. And so now it looks like you're in that other location. You're not located at home now in your home state or wherever. You're located at whatever endpoint that you connected to. And so that gives you online freedom, or the ability to access apps and websites while you're on the go, because there are web applications and streaming services and things like that that control what you do or what you can view based on your location. And there are times when you might want to be able to be on the move and use those services as if you were still at home. VPNs use encryption to scramble your data. And what encryption is it takes plain text, plain data, and it jumbles it up using a formula, an algorithm, to scramble the data, and then it sends it across. And on the other end, it gets unscrambled, decrypted. So while it's in transit like that, no one can snoop on it. Data security is especially important when you're on a public network, because you have no control over that, and it keeps other people from eavesdropping on your activities, where you're going, what you're doing. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got then once you get a VPN in place. With a VPN, you've got your devices again, but now, as you can notice, we've got a little lock on there. And that lock is indicating that we are using encryption. And so once again, you've got your PC, your cell phone, your tablet, your laptop, or whatever. And again, we still need to connect to our router and our ISP. But now we've got this tunnel going on, and that tunnel encrypts our data and sends it to whatever VPN server that we've chosen to connect to. So while it's going through that tunnel, your ISP, for example, cannot open up your data and tell what you're doing. It no longer can see what websites you visit, what information you download, what purchases you make, things like that. And so then from that VPN server, excuse me, that server will connect you to the internet. So, a VPN is not an internet service provider. It is an additional service that you would have to pay for. So, as I say, once you get that tunnel set up and working between you and your VPN server, you don't essentially have to worry about hackers or firewalls looking to block particular traffic that you may be doing, like streaming video. And the government then is not going to have a record of where you went or what you did. So what does that VPN hide for you? Well, your browsing history. Where you go on the internet is not a secret. Your ISP and your web browser can track where you go and what you do. And the ISP knows because they are your connection to the internet. And generally, you use something called DNS, which is the domain name service. And it's basically a phone book for those of you older folks like me. A lot of people now, what's a phone book? A phone book of how to look up places that you want to go on the internet. When you want to connect to a website like Amazon.com, your computer does not know where Amazon.com is. And so it actually has to connect to a phone book, a DNS server, and it says, hey, I would like to go to Amazon.com. What is their IP address? And there we are back to IP addresses again. And so the DNS server is almost always located at your ISP. And so every time you look up a place to go, the ISP's DNS server or phone book gives you the address, and then you take off and go there. So they have a record of that. They know every website you go to. So definitely that's not secret. A lot of the websites that you go to yourself also log the fact that you've been there and track what you do while you're on the website, and also sometimes are able to see where you came from. What was the website you were at before you came to them? And where did you go when you left? Have you noticed that recently, and I'm talking about maybe in the past year or so, that practically every website you go to pops up and says, we use cookies. Will you allow us to use cookies? And most of the time, it's not really a choice. You either say yes or you can't stay there. Cookies are a little tiny piece of software that gets put on your machine by a website, and it has things in there like your login information, where you've gone on the website, things like that. And so the reason why they've done it for ever since the internet started, basically, they've tracked your location and things that you do by cookies. It's just that recently they had to start asking if they could do that because there were privacy suits brought in Europe. And Europe is a lot more concerned about security than we are. And so any company that may, conceivably have users connect to their website from Europe, then needs to put that disclaimer up there, and they basically have to consent to being tracked. Your web browser also can keep track of your search history and link that information to your IP address. VPN also hides your IP address and your location. If someone, and by the way, when you go to a website, they know what your IP address is. It's your identifier on the web. And so if someone gets a hold of your IP address, they can actually look up where you're located by your IP address. Think of your IP address as a return address that you put on a letter. It leads right back to your device. How do these websites know that when you go there, they say, oh, you're in Huntington, West Virginia. Your local store is this one. They're doing that by IP addressing and geolocation. And geolocation is a way to put your physical location where you're located in the world. Because that VPN is using their address and not the one that you got from your ISP, then you're able to be relatively private on the web. And now you can search anonymously. For example, if you go to Google, normally Google is they're one of the worst offenders about this, tracking everything you do because they want to sell advertising targeted to you. And so they state that they clear their information, your search information, every 18 months, but I don't know that that's ever actually been independently audited or proven. So, for example, if someone commits a crime, the authorities may subpoena the search history to see what you searched for, something like that. And so when you're using a VPN and you do a search with Google, it says, oh, okay, this search for whatever came from this particular IP address. That is not your IP address. It is the VPN provider's address. So it doesn't appear to have been searched by you. It was searched by the VPN IP address. So that protects against your search history being gathered, viewed, or sold online. VPN also hides your location for streaming. You might, pay for a streaming service like Amazon Prime Video or Netflix or Hulu, and those services might let you watch pro football or something like that. If you travel outside the country, that service is probably not going to be available to you. And the reason for that is they have contract agreements and things like that to not make that certain event available outside of a certain area. Or if you've ever seen blackouts, like you're having a football game in your particular area and they black that out locally because they want you to buy tickets and go there. And so Netflix, for example, has different catalogs of movies and television shows and things like that they allow to be shown to you based on what your location is around the world. And so if you travel, you could, let's say you're outside the country and you wanted to see something that you would have been able to watch from home. Well, you could connect with the VPN to a server inside the United States that would then let that content be streamed to you. Also, an added benefit of that is that may keep you from getting throttled speed-wise. What that means is some ISPs, if they see that you're streaming video, they will slow down that traffic because they would prefer that you be buying cable service from them rather than, watching on Netflix or whatever. And so they may slow down your speed so that the video is not quite as good as it should be. Well, if you're doing a VPN and your data is encrypted, they're not going to know what kind of traffic is going through there. And so they can't really throttle it based on what you're doing. VPNs also hide your devices. Again, you are no longer using your return address, your IP address from your ISP, and you're using the VPN IP address, and people cannot see your device per se through that VPN. Your device is a target for cyber criminals, especially if you're on a public Wi-Fi network. They're always looking to intercept your data. They're looking for bank account information, usernames, passwords, social security numbers, things like that that would help them steal your identity or your money. So a VPN helps protect that data that you send and receive on your devices so that they're not able to see everything that you do. VPN also hides your web activity. Hopefully you're not a candidate for government surveillance, but you never know, because very often if you are being surveilled, you do not know that you are. And a VPN protects against your ISP seeing your browsing history, so they can no longer log that. Also, if, let's say that you're in an area of the world where censorship is highly enforced, such as China, North Korea, countries like that, they censor all kinds of content, and they very often have laws, by the way, against VPNs, because they want to be able to control what you can and cannot access. So be aware that there are some laws that regulate that. However, if you were to come into the country from outside and you already had a VPN set up, it would be very unlikely that the government there would be able to track that, because you've already got the encryption enabled. So by hiding your web activity, if a government agency were to come to your ISP and ask for the records of what you've done, they would just be able to say that you connected to that VPN server, and that's it. Now, assuming your VPN provider doesn't log your browsing history, and some of them do, your VPN can help protect your internet freedom so that you can freely move around without being monitored everywhere you go. Another real offender for monitoring where you go and what you do is Facebook. So if you're in the market for a VPN provider, make sure that you know where they are based. And very often, you're going to want to get one that is in a country that doesn't have reciprocity necessarily with the United States, so that they have no legal means to force your VPN provider to pay records that they may or may not be keeping. Okay, so we've talked about all these things that a VPN does do. And, Hollywood, you hear this stuff, oh, well, I'm just going to completely disappear. What doesn't a VPN do for you? Well, it's not an internet connection. Like I said, and you saw in the diagram there, you still have to have an ISP, an internet service provider, your cable company or the phone company, to provide you a connection to the internet so that then you can connect to the VPN servers. A VPN is not a cloak of invisibility like Harry Potter or something that makes everything you do invisible to everyone on the internet. This is not a license to go out and commit crimes. The idea being that you can't possibly be tracked at all. It can still happen. Just because your VPN provider claims that they don't keep logs of your activity, they are normally located in other countries, which means that they have no accountability for those logs. Now, when you go to take a look and you're browsing to see who you might conceivably want as your VPN provider, probably the top three out there are NordVPN. They are based in Panama, and I believe they've had an independent audit that says that they are not keeping logs. Surfshark is another one, and they are located in the British Virgin Islands. They do. I don't believe that they've had an independent audit, but again, they say that they don't keep logs. And then ExpressVPN, which is another popular one, is also located in the British Virgin Islands, and they have had independent audits that show that they are not logging your information. So I put it as a two-edged sword because you want them to not be, fall under the requirements of U.S. law enforcement, to force them to show information about you, but then also you can't force them to prove, let's say, that they don't have logs on you. So, and as much as we would like this to be the case, a VPN does not protect you from viruses or other malware. The thing of it is, if you are browsing to websites that are infected and you click on things, attachments and emails and things like that are the vector to get or spread malware or a virus, then that's going to follow you back through the VPN and infect your device. So you still have to be an informed user and not do dangerous things that would normally get you infected with malware or viruses. So this isn't necessarily just for VPNs, but we're looking at a cybersecurity expo here. So, what is the biggest threat to online security? People ask that all the time. Well, the biggest threat is not hackers. That's interesting. You'd think hackers, number one. It's not malware. It's not tracking software that tracks you through the internet. The biggest threat to online security is you. You have to be informed and you have to be aware of where you go, what you do, be on the lookout for scams and all the, shady activity that tends to get you infected or get you to give up information that you hadn't necessarily planned on providing. So that's basically it for my VPN thing here about what can you do, what can't you do. I'm just looking to see if anybody has asked any questions. Yes, I see that the one question there, yes, it's a definition for a phone book, a book with phones in it. And I just know that that's one of my students. I know you're out there.